Greetings, programs, and welcome to the latest episode of the Awesome Friday Movie Podcast, where we speak about two movies each week. My name is Matthew, and with me, as always, is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope everyone is well listening to us today, and you are coming to, well, at least half of this podcast is coming from my new location, live from Kingsway and
East Van.
It hasn't quite got the same ring as New York City, but I am out of downtown East Side, and I am slightly south of downtown East Side. But I have my own little room now, my own little safe, warm room. So I'm very happy about that. So hi, how are you? What's your adjective?
I'm fine. We're all fine. It's all fine here. You know, I was saying before we started recording, I'm having some trouble mustering up enthusiasm for stuff today. But otherwise, we're fine. We're fine.
Is that because we have to talk about Red Notice?
I mean, it's not that. It's funny, we're going to talk about two films this week. We're going to talk about the new Apple TV Plus release, Finch, with Tom Hanks, which is quite good. And we're going to talk about the new Netflix release, Red Notice, which is aggressively mediocre. And we're not going to talk about Eternals as planned because we had a minor COVID-related, I had to self-isolate for 3 days scare.
Yeah, how do you feel? Are you okay?
I'm fine. It's really annoying because I was talking to my boss about this in that, on the one hand, I got sent home from work because I had some minor symptoms. And on the one hand, it was super annoying because I had a ton of stuff to do that day. But on the other hand, it's actually really nice that we're prioritizing, self-care and normalizing staying home when you're sick and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the downside was that I had to go home and stay home until I didn't have any symptoms anymore, and that was the day we were supposed to see Eternals. So we didn't do that. So we'll cover Eternals at some point. I'm sure it's Marvel. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, we could. You know what? I'm fairly confident we could do an entire podcast on Eternals without actually having seen Eternals.
Maybe.
I can guarantee what I'm going to say about it, so that's fine.
Yeah. Interestingly, I have a couple of interesting thoughts about Eternals not having seen it. One is that, unlike, say, the Disney Plus TV shows from this year, or even just the other Marvel movies from this year, the discourse has been kind of quiet about Eternals. Mm-hmm. I think from what I understand, it does some things that Marvel movies haven't done before, and people are not necessarily responding. But my main piece of feedback for the discourse about Eternals is that, so right after the first press screenings, someone came out and basically said a bunch of stuff about stuff that happens in the post-credit scenes. And I'm not going to spoil them here. So what I have to say is, I guess, mildly hypocritical. But the whole internet's been up in arms about, spoilers for Eternals, because this guy came out and said, here's a description of the post-credit scenes, a week and a half, 2 weeks before the movie actually came out. And I have two thoughts about this. And they're conflicting thoughts. And one is that it's absolutely a dick move for anyone in the press to spoil a film, especially when you get to see it 2 weeks before normal people. Right? I think everyone can agree to that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't think that talking about the commercials for the next movie that come at the end of the movie is necessarily spoiling the movie. You know what I mean? It's the post-credit scenes. It's set up. It's literally 30-second tidbits to set you up to go to the next. It's not the movie, right?
But those are so deliciously satisfying, though. Everyone loves those, and to tell it's like coming out, and if you've never had a Kinder Surprise before, and someone comes out and goes, "Oh, you know that Kinder Surprise? There's a toy inside." That takes away some of the joy of Kinder Surprise. Americans, you don't know what Kinder Surprise are because they're banning your country for being a health hazard. So enjoy your guns, but no Kinder Surprises. But
I mean, don't get me wrong.
I think it's a dick move.
I get it because, and this is the very reason why I'm not even talking about it now, even though the movie's out. And I kind of hate that the movie is, as of the time we recorded this, it's technically been out for 2 days. And all anyone's talking about on TikTok and Instagram and whatever is Eternal. I still have all the Eternals words muted on Twitter because I just don't want to deal with it. But one other thing I do find interesting, though, is that everyone's talking about the post-credit scene, and nobody's talking about the movie. And if the post-credit scenes are more interesting than the movie, that might be that might be a problem.
Might be a
You know.
sign of something.
Anyway, like, I mean, again, I think it's a dick move, but on the other hand, it is. They're commercials for the next movies, right? They're not like it's not the movie. So I don't know. It's again, my feelings on this are conflicting and mixed. So
Mhm.
it's if we're at a point where you can't talk about a commercial, then I think we've passed a critical point in the discourse.
But I mean, I'm on the other side of that because I think it's not anyone's right to tell anyone else any single thing that happens in that movie. That's why we're so upfront about spoilers because and how you define a spoiler is any information from that movie. Yes, it's a commercial for the next part of the movie, but it's also some a lot uh, an element that many people like to be surprised at. Like many people stay and go, oh, "Gasp! Here, look, it's stunt casting as this person." And there's a little like burst of serotonin, like, oh, I don't look who it is. You do the whole Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV meme.
Hmm.
Look, it's him. And no one has the right to take that away. It doesn't matter how big or small that piece of information is or how important or irrelevant it is. Nobody has the right to come out and go, hey, guess what, guys? Uh, Look at this is what exactly what happens in that thing that you look forward to. No one has the right to do that.
Yeah, and I guess it also comes down to the fact that, for better or for worse, the Marvel movies are just a TV show, right? Like it's they're all just one episode in the ongoing Marvel franchise,
They are,
and and
and
like
honestly,
any tidbit is going to be a spoiler, really.
there's with Marvel, in my feeling with Marvel movies at the moment, and I would happy to be proved wrong, but the formula is so stark, unintended. The formula is so stark now that the post credits the only thing that you don't know what's going to happen these days. Like that's the only bit of surprise that happens in Marvel movies. Like the exactly what happened in Shang-Chi, which I really liked. And
Hmm.
Shang-Chi is already going to be on Disney Plus soon, like really soon. And I'm really
Hmm.
looking forward to seeing it again. But the only surprising part of that movie was the post-credit scene.
Hmm.
And it wasn't even done to tease anything. It was just funny. So
Well,
I
and
don't know.
also like, again, this is me splitting hairs and having mixed conflicted feelings, but the post-credit scene in Shang-Chi was relevant to Shang-Chi, whereas from what I understand of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
post-credit scenes in Eternals is that they literally are just, I mean,
yeah.
there's characters in them from the movie, but they're relevant to future movies, not to what
Yeah.
happened in the movie you just saw.
That's a really good point, actually. Many Marvel post-credit things are have nothing to do with what you've just seen, and that's fine. That they have that function.
Yeah.
But Shang-Chi's was good because of its relevance, definitely.
I guess, like, on the one hand, yeah, spoilers, but on the other hand, I grew up in an era where you'd watch a TV show and then the last 30 seconds of the TV show would be like, next time on, and it would be the kind of stuff that's in the post-credit scenes now, right? Like,
Yes,
and I'm not
absolutely.
technically old enough to remember this firsthand because it happened in 1982 or whatever, but like, Spock's death in The Wrath of Khan was in the newspaper 3 weeks before the movie came out. Like, spoilers are not a new thing.
Mm,
And as much as I think as a society, maybe we're a little bit overly sensitive to them now in a way that I feel. So I have such mixed feelings about film discourse in general, but I feel like we focus on the wrong things a lot of the time. And I think all of what I'm thinking about, and again, I'm very mixed on all of this, is just an extension of we're especially with Marvel stuff and Star Wars stuff, we're so focused on the minutia that we miss the story a lot of the time. Like
mhm.
it's anyway. I have thoughts. I have so many thoughts about all of
I
this, but
think for me, I'm definitely on the oversensitive side of spoilers because I get such pleasure from being surprised, and it doesn't happen that often. But as I'm getting older, and I've watched so many things now. It takes like very strong creativity to really draw me in. Like I like a lot of stuff, but if it's not, like, we're going to talk about this later in Red Notice, if there isn't creativity to it, then it just leaves me completely cold. And a really good example of that is Bad Boys 3. And I haven't seen Bad Boys 1 or 2. I've seen part of Bad Boys 2, I think, and didn't think anything of it at all. Bad Boys 3 is shot with this amazing dynamic like directing style with color, with like the camera doing flips sometimes, so the angles are all reversed. And I love watching that movie because it is so creative. And
Hmm.
those guys are now directing something that you're going to tell me that is going to be really, really cool.
I'm sure they are. I
They,
don't remember what it is.
oh, Tomb Raider. They're directing the new Tomb Raider, which I'm really excited about. I think I've got that right. But anyway, um, the every time, this is why I don't read any reviews or I don't do anything about anything that I'm into anymore, because every
They're
single thing that
sorry. Adil and Bilal are directing Batgirl, followed by Beverly Hills
uh
Cop 4.
oh, I didn't know there was a four.
And
But
they're
it's
also
Batgirl.
directing 2 episodes of the upcoming Ms. Marvel TV show.
And if you've seen Bad Boys 3, you know that Ms. Marvel and Batgirl especially are going to be a fantastic fit for that kind of style, like color and humor and action. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. I on a related note, I really wish that you had been able to watch The Harder They Fall instead of Red Notice. But what are you playing with something?
Uh,
What's that noise in the background?
is that me? You can hear
Yeah, it's
that?
you. I can hear that, yeah.
Look, I am a perpetual fiddler, and because I've just moved house, I have a tape measure in my pocket at all times. So I will put that down now.
Yeah,
The harder they fall.
we are not going to talk about it because
Okay,
I
next week maybe.
without hyperbole, The Harder They Fall. So I keep pretty close track of how I rate films. I know I don't put ratings on Awesome Friday, but when I log films in my sort of like personal diary and on Letterboxd, I do give them a star rating out of 5. And The Harder They Fall is only the 6th movie of this entire year I've given 5 out of 5 to. So,
Wow.
um,
Do you
yeah,
like westerns as a genre?
I do. I do. I think they're actually a really good genre for film, but um, again, without going into any detail, it's brutal. It's a throwback to like the classic style of western. None of this revisionist. And not that revisionist westerns are bad, but like the characters are all super cool. It's very colorful. The action is brutal. There's a really great fight at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and the soundtrack, as the children say these days, completely slaps. So,
How old are you? Can you say slaps legally now? I don't know. I
no,
think.
I aged out of that term this year.
Oh come on! You still make TikToks. You're still cool with the kids.
I haven't made a TikTok in months. Um, but yeah, so I don't know when we're going to talk about it, but you should definitely watch The Harder They Fall. I really, really loved it.
Okay, let's do it next
So,
week then with Eternals.
yeah, assuming we see Eternals.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But we are going to talk about. So we're going to talk about 2 films now. We're going to talk about Apple TV's new release, Finch, with Tom Cruise first, I
Mhm.
think, because Simon has not finished watching it.
uh, Simon has not started watching
So what I said is true. I'm glad we're in agreement. Uh,
it.
and after that, we'll move into probably a pretty spoiler-heavy discussion of Red Notice, which is the most expensive film Netflix has ever made.
Is it really?
It is apparently, yeah. But let's talk about Finch first. So,
Okay.
for those of you who are unaware, Apple TV Plus is definitely a thing, and their track record is, as with every streaming service, mixed. They've made some good stuff and some bad stuff, but Finch is one of the good things. So, let me take you through a brief synopsis of the plot. Tom Hanks is alone. He lives in a post apocalyptic world where the world's ozone has been fried by a solar flare. And he lives alone with his dog, and he's old and he's starting to die, basically. And he's built a robot who is played by, I believe in motion capture, but certainly in voice by Caleb Landry Jones. And he builds this robot specifically so that someone will be there to take care of the dog after he dies. At the beginning of the movie, after the robot is built, but before his programming is complete, a series of storms are rolling towards St. Louis, where he lives, and they're going to basically form a superstorm over the city that will last so long he won't be able to forage for food. So they decide to load up in a 1980s Winnebago or RV of some kind and head for the coast. They can't go east because it's too ruined. They can't go south because it's too hot. They can't go north for reasons that are implied to be it's too irradiated, but never exactly confirmed. So they head west towards San Francisco. And the rest of the movie is Tom Hanks and his dog and his robot friend driving across country. And it is lovely from start to finish. I'm really upset you didn't watch this because I really wanted to talk about it in more detail,
Yeah,
actually.
no, I mean, talk about it. That's fine. You can spoil the hell out of it. It's okay. I mean, the from your synopsis, as soon as you started saying the way you're describing it is giving me some pretty strong Castaway vibes. Basically, Tom Hanks being by himself in a bad situation.
I mean, a little bit. I don't. We'll talk without spoilers because this is the first movie on the podcast. Uh, so I'll avoid spoilers as much as humanly possible, which should be entirely. Um, but it's more of like a boy and his dog. Yeah, it's sort of two things. One, it's a boy and his dog because he's basically teaching the robot, who eventually names himself Jeff, uh,
Of course.
to take care of the dog. And it's also the robot. So when they leave, the robot is like they make a point of saying that of all the information he's trying to download into the robot's sort of brain, it's only about 75% complete. So there's about 25% that he has to like just verbally teach the robot about how to exist in the world. Um, and the whole thing is really just like father and son on a road trip. It's pretty great because Caleb Landry Jones' performance as Jeff is so pitch perfect in terms of like childlike wonder and naivete and just this like and just the way he speaks. And I'm sure it's through some post processing of some kind because there's lots of like glitches in the way he speaks, but he's such a delightful, innocent, childlike presence, even though he's a 7 foot tall robot.
There's this kind of uh, humanoid robot learns through interaction is a own subgenre in itself. Like short, what makes this different from like Short Circuit or Chappie or something like that?
It's
It's good.
in terms of versus Chappie, it's that it's good, and in terms of versus Short Circuit, it's not super dated and full of bad racial stereotypes.
Okay.
And there's also no question from the beginning that he's like a sentient, self-aware being. Like he's programmed to be that
Mm,
way because he's the whole point of um, Finch building the robot. Finch being the title character, Tom Hanks. Um, is specifically because he knows he's not going to be around forever and he needs someone to take care of the dog because he loves the dog. So he's built to be self sufficient and self sustaining from the get go.
mhm.
Um, there's also, as a total side note, there's another smaller robot named Dewey who's like a little, also like a dog, who you will fall in love with immediately when you watch the film.
It sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for me to be sad about things dying.
There's definitely moments where you will probably cry. I think if this
Oh
movie
no.
had made me cry, it didn't. I didn't cry, although lots of
Mm.
people who I've been reading some reactions and lots of people did. I think if it had, it would have been a 5 star movie for me. But as it
What
is, I
if
gave it.
is that the extra star? Or if you shed tears?
It's not not. I just movies that give me that strong of emotional reaction will get a 5 star rating, pretty much
Mhm.
unerringly.
What is there a bigger human cast, or is this Tom Hanks carrying the whole thing on his weighty shoulders?
Oh, it's Hanks and Jones, but yes, that's it.
Hmm.
You don't
But
really. You do see there's one sequence in which there are other humans present, but you never actually see them. They're in cars in the background. Like you never. And there's one flashback where you do actually see some people. Um, at one point, the story flashes back to like as the world is falling apart, and you do see, you learn why Tom Hanks is so attached to the dog, other than the obvious in that it's a dog. Like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's pretty much entirely just Hanks and Caleb Landry Jones bouncing off one another, and there's just a lot of really lovely human moments. And again, there's been a lot of good movie robots this year, but this is one of the better ones. I would argue. There's a great scene where they're on this road trip, and the robot's like, "Would you like me to drive?" And he's like, "You've never driven before." He goes, "Yeah, I am a good driver." Like, and then there's a whole sequence later in the movie where he like teaches the robot to drive like he was a 12-year-old learning to drive. It's just great. The whole thing is great.
Do you know if Jones was on set with him in mocap, or is this Tom Hanks acting to a green screen or to a tape?
Honestly, I haven't looked into it, but I can only assume he was there because of the way it plays out, because of their interactions.
Hmm.
He must have been there, or at least somebody was there, because I can't imagine this being against. I can't imagine the acting being against nothing.
Well, it's Tom Hanks. Come on, he could act against anything at all, including
I mean,
nothing.
that's true. Yeah, motion capture and voice. Yeah, is definitely there. Um,
The I'm just looking at a picture actually of what this robot looked like, and he looks just wonderfully goofy. He looks like a just with big bug eyes and big like oversized hands.
yeah, I
Uh,
don't want to spoil it because it's such a lovely little moment. But his head looks small and his limbs look sort of thin. But there's this big chunky bit in his chest that serves a purpose that you find out what it is later in the film that is just wonderful.
right.
Like it doesn't look like anything until you realize what it is, and then you're like, "Oh, that's great."
Does the dog die? I need to know if the dog dies before I watch this movie.
The dog does not die.
All right, safe.
Yeah,
So that means my wife can also watch this movie. That's good.
yeah, but it will definitely, it's definitely an emotional film, and it'll definitely give you some feelings. And I don't know where it's going to land in terms of my top 10, but
Mhm.
it's a great film. It's one of the better films I've seen this year. That's saying a lot. It's been a pretty good year for movies.
In terms of the director, I'm just seeing who actually directed this. Miguel Sapochnik. Um, does it? Things that are made specifically for TV. So this was made. This was. I assume this was an Apple production that was made for Apple TV.
No, it wasn't
So it.
actually. It
Oh.
was it was produced by Universal Pictures, and it was originally set to be released in theaters, and then due to the pandemic it
Uh,
got sold to Apple TV.
oh. Okay. That nullifies my next question. And I mean, we could talk about this with Red Notice though as well. That I sometimes wonder when something is made specifically for TV if you can tell from the way it's directed or shot that it's not designed for a big screen. Do you see what I mean?
I do. I So Miguel Sapochnik has only directed two films, including this one. One was a movie called Repo Men with Jude Law and Forrest Whitaker, which is a bad movie that I really enjoy.
Hmm.
Um, and he's been very prolific in TV, and
Oh yeah.
actually won, I think, an Emmy Award for Best Director for. He directed some of your favorite episodes. For those of you who watched it, he directed basically all of your favorite action episodes of Game of Thrones.
Right.
So
And he did
he directed Hard Home, and he directed the Battle of the Bastards. Like in terms of like the memorable action episodes, he's the guy. He's the guy
right.
from Game of Thrones. He also directed altered an episode or two of Altered Carbon,
Hmm.
and Banshee and Falling Skies and Fringe.
Oh,
Like the dude's been working a long time in
yeah,
TV.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
so
is this well directed then? Would you say?
oh yeah, it's wonderfully directed.
Okay.
Um, he what I'm trying to get to with all this, especially the Game of Thrones stuff, is that he does seem to have a good eye for combining realistic elements like Tom Hanks with sort of more fantastic elements, like a 7 foot tall talking robot with an orange face. So, yeah, it's good. It's good. I
Oh,
think you should watch it. It's one of the best things Apple TV Plus has released, and Tom Hanks now has 2 movies on the platform, and they are both good. So he's batting 1,000.
the other one is Tom Hanks' Boat Commander, Submarine Commander, something like that.
Yeah,
What's the other one?
it's called Greyhound, and he's a World War II battleship captain, and it's also like it's definitely dad action because it's a World War II battleship movie, but it's a great movie.
What are you saying?
I mean,
Just because I.
I loved it. I'm just saying it's exactly the kind of movie that my dad will also love.
Yeah, it's pretty safe dad bet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Battleships. Well, I mean, just you describing it, and it's been spoiler free. Thank you very much, and you've described it in enough detail for me to really, really want to watch this movie because it sounds like exactly the kind of thing. What I'm quite looking forward to actually after this week is actually having way more time to watch stuff. Now I've actually moved, and the last hellish month is over.
Hmm.
um, Apart from unpacking boxes and working, I've got more time to watch stuff, so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, good. Hi, Freud. That's a dog.
That was my dog. Hello. My dog is very happily asleep on the couch next to me. Oh, I'm doing something else now.
Yeah.
Good. Does Finch open itself up to a sequel, or is this a one and done? Without
I
obviously
mean,
spoiling.
you can make a sequel out of anything, but it's a self-contained story. It doesn't.
Right. Oh, that's
It
good.
it has no need for a sequel.
Yeah.
It's self-contained and wonderful.
Well, marvelous.
And like
That's the.
honestly, the other thing too is that everyone makes a big deal out of um, guys like Andy Serkis who put in these amazing mo-capped performances, but this is one of the times where I thought, yeah, Caleb Landry Jones, let's do this thing.
What have we what have we seen him in before?
Lots of stuff. He was the skeezy brother in Us, and he was Banshee in X Men First Class. He's in a Canadian horror film called oh fuck, what was it called? That Brandon Cronenberg. He's been in a ton of stuff. Anyway, you've definitely seen him before. He's a tall, skinny, ginger guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know who you mean. Was he in Possession?
I
That
don't
body horror where they
know.
got no, I know the movie you mean. The body horror one. Yeah, I know that guy. Oh well, that's fantastic. Good. I really, really want to watch it now. Sounds great.
Yeah. And he's been in like a
Well,
ton of stuff. I think he was in 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Uh, The Dead Don't Die last year. Um, yeah, I mean he's been in a ton of stuff, like a ton of stuff.
cool.
Solid reputation as a young character actor,
Hmm.
and I think he got his real big break on Friday Night Lights, the TV show. I
Oh yeah.
think
Oh,
so. Yeah, he's
excellent.
good shit.
Good, good, good. Well, that's a clear recommended for Finch. I can't wait to watch that. In
Indeed.
fact, I wish I had watched that.
Yeah.
So, shall we move on to our second movie?
So yeah, let's talk about Red Notice. Simon,
Okay.
why don't you take us through
Yes.
a brief but spoiler-free synopsis of the aggressive mediocrity that is Red Notice?
um, Someone at Netflix said, "Okay, what's the most algorithmic movie we can make? With we want Ryan Reynolds, and we want him to be Ryan Reynolds, and we want The Rock, and basically we want him to be The Rock, and we're going to get Gal Gadot because she's beautiful." And then they pressed some buttons on a computer, and it spat out a script. And this script is about a heist, and it begins with the backstory, some exposition, which is always a good way to begin a movie, about a number of gilded eggs. Apparently, these were a big deal. There were a couple of eggs hunted by various people, and these eggs are basically if you put them together, they're worth a lot of money. That's basically the premise. And so a team of, or also these, a thief, Ryan Reynolds, a cheeky thief, Ryan Reynolds, gruff FBI agent, The Rock, and sexy femme fatale thief, Gal Gadot. You see, they've really pushed the casting here. They all go for, well, Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot are going for the eggs because they want money, and The Rock's job is to try and stop them stealing because he works for the FBI. And then in amongst all that is like this kick-ass British police woman who kicks ass but also looks amazing in a dress when she goes to a ball. And the story takes you on a wild ride through a variety of CG backgrounds. These CG backgrounds you can find in screensavers such as Egypt or downtown. And then you just plonk a box in front of the background and dress them up in fancy clothes, and we're in Egypt. And through this exhilarating story with multiple twists you won't see coming or care, um, then the story of the three eggs slowly unfolds until the sequel is set up at the end. And basically, if you've ever seen Ryan Reynolds be the quick talking, cheeky one, and The Rock be the big, gruff one who throws people through walls, and Gal Gadot being beautiful and cheeky, you literally could sit down and close your eyes for an hour and a half and just imagine them interacting in a variety of backgrounds and clothes, and you would have this movie. And then think of like the worst fucking twists you can think of, and put those at the end because people like those. I'm sorry, maybe I didn't like this movie quite as much as you, Matt, but that's what happens.
I mean, I definitely think I liked it more than you, and that my overall feeling was that it was fine. Um,
It's
but it's not. Nothing you're saying is incorrect, though. Like the you're right. It's all CG. I read afterward that all the because of the original plan was actually to shoot this in all the places that they go, but then
yeah.
the pandemic happened, and so they shot it all in Atlanta. So, or
Right.
LA, I can't remember. It's all in. It's all everywhere is a set though.
And let me
Um,
tell you, you can tell.
if I find it's if you like Ryan Reynolds, and I do, very generally speaking, this is definitely him being Ryan Reynolds. You can tell that there's a few lines that he either wrote or improved as well,
Mm-hmm.
because he goes. There's a couple of moments where he basically goes full Deadpool, and you know
Mm-hmm.
they go into a warehouse at one point, and he tells them to look for the box marked MacGuffin. there's definitely a part
Oh,
where he's there's definitely a part where he's outlining a heist, and he goes, "We have to get past these
yes.
featured extras." You
Yes.
know,
He does that a lot. That's the only part of this movie that I really liked, like truly liked, is that he keeps making theatre and film making references, like just smashes through that fourth wall, and it happens a lot.
yeah.
And there's another one that I can't remember, but no, absolutely, I enjoyed those moments.
Yeah, and I mean, there's each act of the film is a different kind of movie too. Like the first act is, the FBI guy after the sly thief, The Rock after Ryan Reynolds, and then the second act they're forced to. The Rock is framed, and they're forced to team up, and they have a prison break, and then a heist, and then the third act is basically an Indiana Jones movie
Hmm.
or a fanfic thereof.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
He even whistles the theme tune as he goes into his mysterious Nazi cave.
yeah. So, and like, it sounds like we're already spoiling some stuff, but like,
If we're not.
Simon's not wrong in that like you definitely there's nothing in this movie that's going to happen that you're like, oh, that was a surprise. it's, um it's very by the numbers, very safe, and I think it's really interesting that I think it's fine, like it's aggressively fine. um I think it's kind of disappointing that Ross and Michael Thurber, the director, started out making movies that I really like. Like his first feature film was Dodgeball, a true underdog story, which is a film that I
No
legitimately
way.
love.
That's a great film.
But the further into his career he gets, the more safe. Like his last movie, which was also with Dwayne the Rock Johnson, was Skyscraper, which is another film that I thought was aggressively okay. And
Mm.
his Film before that was Central Intelligence with The Rock and Kevin Hart, which again, totally fine. It's fine. And I just think he keeps making fine movies that do a little bit of business, and they keep letting him make bigger ones. And this one apparently cost $160 million or something like that.
I wonder how
And
much that was just paycheck though.
at least 40 million of it was paycheck because both Dwayne Johnson and Gal Gadot got paid $20 million each.
Wow.
And I think it was the first time they both cracked 20 million, and it made her like the second or third highest paid actress this year. And honestly, good for her, because
Yeah.
she's pretty much the only part of this where that I thought her performance was great. I thought she was really fun. I thought she was clearly having a really good time in a way where it wasn't just the same thing she's done over and over again.
Yeah.
Unlike The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, she was at
Yeah.
least trying a little harder.
Yeah.
I also really like, and I'm going to apologize in advance to this gentleman because I can never pronounce his name. But Chris, let me just bring it up so I can try to pronounce it here.
Which character?
The character's name is Sottovoce. He's a
Oh,
arms dealer, and
what?
the actor's name is Chris Diamantopoulos.
What the hell was he doing with
Diamantopoulos.
his voice though?
Oh, he was whispering because in Italian, sottovoce literally means whisper. It means
Yeah,
under
but
voice.
everything was like this.
Yeah,
It drove me crazy.
I mean, he was playing a swarthy Spaniard who had to whisper, and I guess in Spanish, sottovoce means whisper as well, means under voice. But I I thought he was he's usually so great, and I just thought he was fine. He wasn't given enough room to like peacock around the set and chew the scenery to make his performance amazing, but he's never not good, like he's always the most interesting guy on set. I don't know, maybe you probably haven't watched Silicon Valley, so you've never seen him play the billionaire character in that show. um
Uh, is that him?
yeah,
I've seen.
he's the three commas guy. He's got three commas. He's also the guy that that who coined that show's greatest, most quotable line, which is "This guy fucks."
I didn't know it was him.
Yeah,
I think.
there's a great scene in one episode of that whole show where like the market fluctuates, and he for a brief moment he's no longer a billionaire, and he laments that he lost a comma. But yeah, he's fun. He's fine. Um, I don't know. This movie's fine. It's fine. It's
It's stupid, and
it's
let it be known, like I'm a big fan of stupid action movies. Like I will rewatch Triple X3, The Return of Xander Cage. I will watch
whoa,
that movie.
hang on. Triple X3 is not a
Yes,
stupid movie.
Matthew. At some point, they escape on motorbikes, and the motorbikes go on the sea, and they're fine because they have little jet skis that pop out.
Yeah, that's actually
It's
really smart. That's just really smart.
Triple X3 is a stupid, stupid movie, and it completely owns it. It embraces it, and it is brilliantly directed, and is hilariously funny and really diverse. All of the things that Red Notice is not. Like Red Notice
That's
is
true.
clunky, so clunky. Gal Gadot, I disagree with you. I love how she was trying something else. I thought she looked really uncomfortable. She was trying to. I don't think the direction of her line reads was good. I think she was just like it didn't feel natural anything she was doing, and the policewoman was fine, but the I don't know, like there was a lot of eye rolling in this film. I didn't ever feel like I was going along with the story. Like with the when he got to the end, and I was like, oh, revelation, and then another revelation. Like, oh, Jesus, just stop.
I mean, I don't know if we're even going to bother talking in
No,
spoilers,
there's no
but
point.
there is a twist in the third act that I remember thinking about 30 seconds into the second act. So,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to be the twist.
Oh yeah.
Like there's no surprises in this movie.
Yeah.
And while some of it is pretty fun, actually the prison break was pretty fun. But like it's not good.
I wouldn't say. See, I wouldn't say I had fun in this movie at any point.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe Gal Gadot's red dress. Maybe that was fun because I mean, she's just been cast as the evil witch in the live action remake of Snow White, or she's in talks for the witch. And the main problem with that is that this assumes there's somebody more beautiful than Gal Gadot. And I think that's a major problem with that casting. She looks amazing in this movie. She's so beautiful. But it occurred to me there's a fight scene where they fight, the three of them fight to try and grab one of these eggs, and there's like spears and weapons around. And once again, it's edited to shit. All the angles are too close. And I suddenly realized when they were the action was intercut with really obvious like reaction shots, hero reaction shots. And I suddenly realized they didn't do any of this. They shot like four different reaction shots and they just got the stunt people. And that's why they cut so close and so quickly. So you can't ever tell these aren't the real actors.
Hmm.
And so there's no effort to actually show you the actors doing the things they're meant to be doing. And it's just the whole thing is just so basic and by the book. There's no creativity to it at all.
Yeah,
And
and
so it's not exciting.
there's a chase scene in the beginning with Ryan Reynolds running through a museum that ends up
Mm-hmm.
in an actually pretty inventive, honestly, sequence on some scaffolding, but you can definitely
Mm-hmm.
tell when it is him and when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And that sequence ends with the Rock pushing him out of a third floor window, and you can there's definitely a moment where you can tell it's switched to CGI doubles
Oh
and then
god, yeah,
switches back. Like it's
yeah.
pretty pretty egregious for a movie that cost 160 million dollars.
And the CG is just dog shit as well. Like any kind of CG, and there's so much CG in this. It's so obvious. It's not just the backgrounds; it's just everything. Sometimes, as you say, it's like their faces as well. And it's like Jeff Bridges at the beginning of Tron Legacy Bad. It's just like your phone can do better, like faces, like famous faces than this. It's just where's the money? The money went into nabbing the three stars and asking them to do their thing for an hour and a half while they put them in different CG backgrounds and concoct this ridiculous. It's not even like a the MacGuffins is like, well, who cares? Like it's just these three things that cost a lot of money. Okay,
Hmm. What's
and
interesting
this.
to me is that, and so just to be clear, I mean, I basically always enjoy Ryan Reynolds at this point. There's like a base level of, I think
Mhm,
he's good,
mhm,
but it is amazing that how much better he is when you wrap his shtick in something a little fresh, like Free
mhm,
Guy, versus something like this that is
mm,
so we've seen it before. That
yeah,
like when it stands out, but not necessarily in the same good way. You know what I mean?
mm.
It's sort of a really awkward sentence I've just put out there, but
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
but again, when you give them something fresh and interesting to bounce off versus something you've definitely seen before, it
Mhm,
works a little better. Um, or again, in something like Free Guy, where those little fourth wall breaks or references to what everyone knows is happening work a little better because it's worked into the plot and not just something he's
mhm.
obviously improved into place,
Yeah,
right? He's
yeah,
basically
definitely.
always some level of Deadpool at this point, for better or
Yeah.
for worse, and it
Oh, he
just
always has been. I mean, Deadpool fell into his lap perfectly, didn't it? If you go back to something like Blade Trinity, I really like Blade Trinity. I know it's got some lots of people don't like it, but his character in Blade Trinity because it's a little bit different, it's a little bit darker. He's still sarcastic, but he's like knife edge sarcastic, and it's character specific and it fits the plot, and so it works a lot better than this. Just you could just tell when he was like, "Okay, Ryan, could you improvise something funny over this bit so we don't have to pay a scriptwriter, please?" Like, okay, here it
yeah.
is.
I mean, I think most of Ryan Reynolds' worst, not necessarily performances, but certainly worst films are the ones where someone said, "You have great hair and a square jaw. Let's make you the leading straight man in a romantic comedy," as opposed to
Mm,
just letting him be himself, which is
yeah.
effectively depend like Deadpool, but scaled accordingly to the rating of the film,
Mhm.
right? And I think he's far more successful when they let him just be himself.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen that a lot now, but it works. It works.
I've been
To
meaning to. Yeah. Sorry, I was just. I've always wanted to watch that movie where he gets buried alive. He did a really really low budget
Yeah, it's called
Well, I
Buried.
think he almost it's called Buried because obviously he's not his sarcastic self in that. I'd really like to see how that works out.
Well, the interesting thing I would say is that so everything I've said, I don't think this contradicts everything I've said, but the other instance in which I think Ryan Reynolds can work really well is when he does have to actually act,
Hmm.
right? As opposed to being some. And I think a really good example of this, there's a movie he did with Sandra Bullock called The Proposal, which I've seen a number of times because it's not bad. My wife really likes it, so we watched it a number of times. It's got a fun Betty White performance in it. Um, but when he's sort of forced into being that sort of very PG, very samey leading man in a rom com type thing, the same kind of bullshit that Matthew McConaughey got sucked into in like the early
Yeah.
zeros, where you kind of have to always be the same and play as broadly as possible and the same as possible because that's all the role asks for. He doesn't really work. When you let him be his normal, sarcastic Deadpool self, he works. And when you
Hmm.
force him to actually act, he also works.
Hmm.
Um, Interestingly, I think that's also you could say the same thing about Matthew McConaughey. Really,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
when you need him to actually act, I think he's great. When you let him be that sort of like swaggering Texan, sort of slightly douchey, but you love him because he's gorgeous anyway, he works. And when he's just another guy in a rom com, it doesn't really work. You know,
Hmm.
it's similarly like I think Blade Trinity's fine. And on a related note, there's a Matthew McConaughey film called Sahara that I really
Oh,
enjoy. That's a really
I
bad
knew
movie,
I knew you were going to bring up Sahara.
but again,
Sahara
it's
and Red Notice. That's a great double bill, actually. Of
uh,
Sahara's better than Red Notice, and I don't like Sahara that much.
yeah, but at least it has an interesting villain and a fun two fun
Hmm.
central performances in a way where I
Hmm.
think this one really. I mean, we haven't really talked. So we talked about Gal Gadot and we talked about Ryan Reynolds. Can we just for a moment talk about how The Rock, how Dwayne Johnson might be the least interesting action leading man currently working?
Yes, let's talk about that.
I don't think we need to. I think I just said everything we need to say.
Do you know, I was
I,
thinking during this, I was like, there was a period, did I imagine it, where The Rock did like really interesting movies with really interesting directors. Like, you're gonna know this because you just know stuff like this. But he did a movie that was the second movie by a director who did something like Primer or something like The Fountain, and he played the bodyguard of a guy, and it's completely different character for him. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? So
no, maybe
he famously did this.
he was in the sequel
In
to Get Shorty. I think is that what you're talking about, where he plays like
no. Oh, what's that called?
uh, Be Cool. I think.
Oh, I'm talking. I might be talking about Be Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I
Um,
think The Rock is another one where, again, you force him into a situation where he's not just playing The Rock, and like, I think he's really, really good in
oh,
Pain and Gain, for example, which is the most Michael Bay movie that ever Michael Bayed. But
what the fuck? Southland Tales
oh yeah, he's pretty good in that.
by Richard Kelly. And Richard Kelly directed Donnie Darko, maybe.
It's a good thing we have the
Yeah,
internet.
Donnie. So yeah, the director of Donnie Darko. That's where I was going with indie director who did this weird thing. Yeah. So anyway, so The Rock can do stuff. I think he can do stuff. It's just that he's found this niche now that people are going to pay him to be, and he just does it like ruthlessly
Yeah,
over and over and over.
I mean, I think he's
And it,
really funny. I think the reason, so this is his third collaboration with Russ and Michael Thurber. Um, and I think Central Intelligence might be the best of the three, just because I think he's actually a really funny guy when he wants to be. I think his comedic
Mhm,
delivery is pretty good, even though
mhm.
that movie's not great. Um, but like the only real difference between this and Skyscraper is that the character in Skyscraper has a prosthetic leg. But honestly, the movie would never like if you watch the movie and you miss the scene where that's revealed, you would never know it because He's often running. He never limps. And at one point, he
But
jumps from a crane to a
yeah,
skyscraper, 100
that's in
stories
the
in the air. So,
that's in
like,
the that's in the trailer. He has a prosthetic leg and he jumps off that
yep,
crane.
yep,
Okay,
yep.
all right.
That
I
movie's
think what you're saying is right. Actually, when he can be part of a group, when he's like doing his comedic version of himself, like in Jumanji. Jumanji is a great example because his character's meant to be this video game character, this stereotype, and
right, but he's got a
someone in
skinny
his
teen
body.
stuck inside him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he plays that really, really well. And there's occasions where he swaps in the second one where he swaps different people inside him, if you pardon the expression, and he does that really, really well. I think he's got good comedy chops, and he's of course great in Moana.
yeah.
But
And like he again, like in Pain and Gain, where he's playing an ex-convict who has traded in his addiction to cocaine for religion and also cocaine. Uh, he's and also one thing that he does really well in Pain and Gain is that his character is stupid. Like, when
uh,
he I think when you take away when you let him be the strong, hyper capable, hyper intelligent thing, he's not actually that interesting. But if you take away any one of those three, he becomes a lot more interesting. And Pain and Gain does it by making him stupid, and Moana does it by making him not that capable.
mm,
There's one thing you got to remove to make him interesting, something to give him any amount of in personal conflict,
mm.
basically.
I do love how sporadically you'll bring things back to Pain and Gain. If you haven't listened to the podcast before, Matt does like to bring things back to Pain and Gain. This is one of
This
those
is
movies
this is
that's
this is the
on the
first
list.
this is the first time I think since we've relaunched that I've mentioned it.
Yeah, yeah,
I
but
think.
it's always there. Every time you mention it, I'm like, oh, you really love Pain and Gain. Matt talks like Pain and Gain like he talks about his wife. Like he really, really loves this movie. Like we've talked about Pain and Gain a number of times, and I still haven't seen it. And one day I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to text you, hey, this movie's really good. And he's going to send me the thing that he always sends me, which is somebody saying, I told you so.
Yeah,
And you've
that's
even
true.
got that even found that version of like you've even got like versions of it now, like Michael Caine, like I don't want to tell you that I told you so, but hi, but I told you so. So it was my wife coming home. So anyway, I will watch Pain and Gain. But you're right about The Rock. I would love to know more about what happened in Fast and Furious between him and Vin, because Vin's like he did it to bring out his acting more, and I don't think The Rock appreciated that.
I'm
And
pretty
I
sure The
would like.
Rock's reaction to that was, "Oh yeah, fuck you." I mean, that's not what he said, but the interview I read after that came out, that's what he said.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but no, you're right. I might when I see The Rock in something these days, I'm like, I'm not filled with joy. Like, are you going to be The Rock, or are you just going to try and do something else? But
What's interesting too is that I thought, and like everything I've said didn't happen in Jungle Cruise, but I kind of enjoyed him in Jungle Cruise. So
ooh, I haven't seen
there's
Jungle Cruise.
there's there's definitely a certain je ne sais quoi that is required to happen for him to be good. And to be clear, I don't think Jungle Cruise is one of his like better performances, but he
Mhm.
is at least fun and he plays well with Emily Blunt.
Yeah,
Um,
Emily Blunt's the magic here, probably, isn't it?
yeah, something, but he's just sort of again, he's sort of for a 6'5" muscle bound Samoan, he's pretty milk toast in a lot of stuff. it's it's weird. It's very
Yeah,
weird.
yeah, and
So
Hobbs and Shaw actually. If we're talking about The Rock needs a good person to act against, and Emily Blunt brings out the good, and Jumanji cast brings out the good, Jason Statham was not a good mix for The Rock, because that that was just so all of their banter was just so strained in that movie,
maybe they're
and
just too
it's
much. Maybe they're too much the same because
well, Jason
Jason.
Statham is England's greatest actor, remember? So
That's
the
true. I
Rock
mean, that
the
is
Rock has to
true.
live up to that.
I mean,
So
we could talk at length about Jason Statham, but I think maybe Jason Statham is
can we?
exactly the same in that he's at his most interesting, where he's incredibly fit. He has a very he's very attractive, and he's very capable, and he's very intelligent, and you need to take away one of those things to make him interesting.
Mhm.
Um, although he's all of those things in the Meg, which is a
It's,
movie I unabashedly enjoy.
absolutely, the Meg is fantastic, and Spy as well. He is
Well, but in
not.
Spy, he's playing completely against type, so
Yeah, but
or
he's
just
still got the
revealing a type that he's
confidence.
good
And
at.
yeah,
So
maybe it's
anyway,
because he can do anything. He is very versatile.
that's true.
And Crank, I'm going to go watch Crank to remind me myself how versatile he is.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh,
I mean,
okay. Oh.
we could just talk about random actors forever, but maybe I'll just go watch Snatch again because he's really good in that.
I didn't see the most recent film he did with Guy Ritchie, The Wrath of Man. Did you see that?
I haven't watched it. It's on Netflix now, I think, at least in
Right.
Canada. So
I didn't.
I haven't watched it yet, but it's there.
Do you remember when the new Guy Ritchie movie was an event, like a Tarantino level event? That was a
So
long time ago.
I'm gonna answer your question by saying that, and maybe this is something we can go out on, but there aren't that many directors and or even big movie stars who at in this, especially after the last 2 years, who can really generate an event anymore. And I think, you know, even the Marvel films are a good example of that. In that, and to be fair, it's during a pandemic, but none of them have been an event this year in the same way they were three,
Mhm.
4, 5 years ago. None of the DC movies, none of the big blockbusters, not even, for better or for worse, the last big event movie that I can remember might actually be The Rise of Skywalker.
When did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood come out?
Yeah,
Was
but
that before?
even that was, I mean, it felt like an event to me a little bit, but also that's because most of my social feeds are keyed to, like, it's film Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a big event among people who love movies,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like a very generally speaking, wasn't really a big event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like lots of people like Tarantino, so it was very well received and very popular, but it wasn't like it doesn't feel to me like it was a big summer movie event in the same way that, say, even like original Avengers or even
Yeah,
Endgame
yeah,
was, right?
yeah,
It wasn't a thing that
yeah.
was a cultural touchstone that we all had to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're sort of moving past the point where any individual performer outside of maybe like Tom Cruise are really going to be able to, or maybe Spielberg, are really going to be able to generate that anymore.
Yeah. Mm.
The landscape is
Okay.
shifted.
It
Huzzah!
sure has.
Yeah.
And
Well,
on
so,
that bombshell.
yeah. So, what do you have coming up in the next week? Anything exciting? Anything you're looking forward to? We'll probably,
um,
hopefully, talk about Eternals next week, along with something else.
I know. Yeah, hopefully Eternals and hopefully Finch, and we'll find something else. But I'm watching Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix, the second season of that at the moment,
Hmm.
which is fantastic. I don't know if you saw the first season. I'm also playing a video game called Riders Republic, which is totally rad. Basically, it's Ubisoft dropping you on a mountain, and at any point you can switch between skis, snowboard, or bikes. And it's basically everyone plays at the same time. And it's a lot of fun.
Oh, good.
So I'll be doing some more of that and maybe some Animal Crossing. Who knows? How about you? What have you got on?
Uh, lots of stuff. I'm currently covering the Raindance Film Festival out of London, the United Kingdom, which is a
Oh,
little bit awkward because of the 9 hour time difference or 8 hour time difference right now. So you've seen probably people, if anyone's paying attention, which I know they're not. There's been a number of posts on the blog at like 1 in the morning local time, and that's because they're at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning
all
London
right.
time to coincide
Mhm.
with release days. Um, and Blood in the Snow, Canadian Genre Film Festival. The online component's over, but there's an in-person part in Toronto coming up. Um, and then lots of other stuff. There's an Apple TV Plus show that I'm not allowed to talk about yet that I'm watching that I'm enjoying very much.
Cool.
Um, Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
there's a lot of good movies starting to happen, right? So whenever we have Eternals, there's also going to be. I hope you watch The Harder They Fall, so we can talk about it.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll
We
talk
also
about that.
have, and the embargo's lifted on this. I haven't posted anything about it yet, but the new Rebecca Hall directed movie Passing is going to be on Netflix soon, which is also quite lovely. Um,
Hmm.
there's
Good.
a lot of good stuff coming up. I don't know how much of it.
Well,
I don't know how much of the in theater stuff we're going to get to see, but
mhm.
there's a lot of good stuff coming up.
It's a good job you don't have a full-time job to squeeze in amongst all that watching as well.
Yeah, not to mention a full time class load at my night school stuff. So yeah,
Easy.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah.
Okay,
All right. Well,
so
on that bombshell, thank you everyone for listening. If you would like to give us your support, we would love to have it. We appreciate your listenership. We do also have numerous ways to more directly contribute. You can find all of them at awesomefriday.ca. They are one off models and subscription models. You can pay us money if you so desire, and lots of ads you can click on. I know everyone hates ads, and you probably have an ad blocker, but if you don't, click on an ad. It doesn't cost you anything. Put your browser in incognito mode and click on an ad. That's all I'm saying.
thank you for
Um,
listening.
Thank you for listening. We love you all, and we will see you in a week's time where we cover. And yeah, because we have a long term
Well,
plan because we are professional. Anyway, we love you all and have a good day. Bye.
bye, love you, bye.